Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of music that isn't rock or metal, exploring a group that we've had on this channel before. In fact, I think we've checked out an entire album from them. We're looking at Kraftwerk. I've enjoyed their unorthodox approach to music in the past. It hasn't necessarily been my cup of tea casually, but it's always introduced some interesting things to talk about. Today we're going to be looking at The Model, specifically the 2009 remaster. So I'm going to assume that there was some sort of change between the original and this one. Let's dive into it, see what The Model has in store for us. No, not The Model. See what Kraftwerk has in store for us today. So the vocal melody is following along something similar to the synth melody.
She's going out to nightclubs drinking just champagne, and she has been checking nearly all the men.
A very dry snare sounds.
She's playing her game and you can hear them say,
Even the bass is following along with something akin to the lead synth.
she's looking good for beauty, we will pay.
So the bass has its own thing for this segment. And there's a few different lead synth timbres.
She's posing for consumer products now and then. For every camera she gives the best she can. I saw her on the cover of a magazine. Now she's a big success.
The bass is an interesting mix between the lead melody and the percussive syncopation. I could have done without the tinnitus drone at the ends, but I appreciate that it was a resolution to the melody that the synth was playing at that time. It was the final pitch. It was really high pitch, and that That section I thought was fairly high pitched already. Maybe it could have been reined in on the EQ side a little bit. It's kind of softened some of those harsher components to the pitch, but I get it. It works musically. It's interesting just to hang on to that though. This track is fairly straightforward, as I expect from Kraftwerk. They are a group that I think do a great job at crafting a specific atmosphere, and then finding out what that atmosphere can be, what it can grow into, what can run alongside it, different ways of exploring that space without really changing much. And I think that's fairly consistent across all of the Kraftwerk that I have heard. It's not to say that every Kraftwerk song is like that, but from what I understand and how I have them in my mind is more of a minimal focused group where, again, you find an atmosphere, a little bit of variation within it, but generally each song is going to be fairly unified in its approach and what it's trying to say. Through that lens, we have drums, a bass synth, a lead synth, and the vocals, and I think that's it. Even there at the end, when a lower synth came in to take over the melody while the lead synth was holding out that final note, I'm pretty sure that was the bass, just an octave higher than the bass synth had been playing that entire time. And since I'm pretty sure Kraftwerk is a group of people, I'm going to assume that there's two people on keyboards, one for the higher pitch stuff, one for the lower pitch stuff. Somebody doing drums, maybe that's with a drum pad, maybe it's with a kit with MIDI triggering. I'm going to say it's probably a pad because I think they're fully electronic. And then the vocalist, which may be any of the three other people here on the rest of the instruments. And primarily how this works is the drums are consistent throughout the entire thing. We have the, snare on 2 and 4 there. Bass kick, sometimes syncopated, sometimes just on 1 and 3. It allows the drum part to have a lot of forward momentum and groove to it while still kind of locking into something a bit on the simpler side, really being there as a human metronome with a little bit more. There's a little bit of syncopation, a little bit of groove, but their job right here is really just to latch into the core pulse and present that for the rest of the band to work within. The bass, well, I'm going to get to the bass later. The synth, lead synth, this gives us a lot of the lead melody writing on this, whether it is the instrumental part where this melody is isolated or the verse and chorus where it shares melodic components with the vocals. There is a little bit of counterpoint, I suppose, going on here. Not the two parts aren't identical, but they share a lot of the same DNA. This is part of what I think is the core of this song, is the minor variation on this idea. And I said I was going to do the bass later, but I guess we're going to bring it in right here. This is a good place to introduce it. The bass, the bass synth, the lead synth, and the vocals are all very identical. If we have a Venn diagram between the three of these that focuses on how often they are playing the same idea and how often they deviate, we're probably looking at a very large overlap in the center here. The three of these parts are, for the most part, all based off of a single motif. And I find that really interesting, because it makes the moments when they deviate and do their own things, it draws attention to that. It makes me wonder why. What specifically about this moment? It probably is simply that there are some core parts to this motif that they want all the instruments to be in on, and everything else is a bit more looser, less emphasis on what is selected to be unified and what than what isn't. But it is kind of unique. Something I don't think I hear too much of in the modern music sphere. And I know that's like a really big overarching thing, but how I want to compare this though is classical music of old, prior to the modern stuff, prior even to Romantic era. This sort of complex harmonic writing where you basically have three instruments playing the same thing most of the time, but not all the time. And where they deviate creates quite a bit of complexity in the writing. You just don't see too often in pop, rock, metal, electronic, hip hop, country. It's just not a modern thing to do. Melody is singular. If you're going to have multiple instruments doing the melody, it is pure harmony. Or, as we see often, pure counterpoint. But blurring the lines between the two of harmony, or even in this case, parts of it are texture layering, where the vocals and synths can be playing the same exact pitches, but they of course sound very different. So we have counterpoint, we have texture layering, we have harmony, and we just sort of amorphously move between all three of these throughout, especially the verse, but in the chorus as well. I don't know, it's just very intriguing to me. I don't know if it means anything. I mean, the lyrics could be focusing on a trio of components that sometimes work together, sometimes don't, or maybe they work together harmoniously and sometimes they work together in parallel. But I mean, we're kind of reaching some more complex themes in the lyrics too. And in my experience, Kraftwerk lyrics aren't usually that deep. I'll be really surprised if we see anything like that. This feels like it's purely compositional. It's done because it sounds great, because they wanted to write this way, more so than for any thematic reason. But what I do find interesting is the contrast from this. In the instrumental parts, the vocals cut out, so we're down one instrument. And as I pointed out during the reaction, the bass just bounces back and forth between two notes. Those two notes shift as the chords shift, but they're not following along with the melody here. They're following along with the chord progression. There's a little bit of syncopation to it, and it actually lines up with the next thing I want to talk about, which is how the bass is an intermediate point between the world of the melody and the world of the rhythm, because the bass is very interesting in that it does take the melody as a starting point, because this core motif is what all of our melodic lines are taken from. But rhythmically, when it decides to pause, especially when it has shorter phrases than the synth, there's this one part in the track where it's just a series of eighth notes. I don't remember the specific notes. I don't even remember if it was like a rising or falling pattern. Regardless, though, it's just a series of tones. And the bass follows along with it, but instead of playing all 8 or 12 notes or however long it is, they play like 5 or 6, and then they stop. And when they stop is on like a bass kick or on a snare hit. And their moment of silence is alongside the drums, and they come back in on the same syncopated accent that the drums do. And they're blurring the worlds here. Is the bass a rhythmic instrument here? Yeah, absolutely. They are paired along with the drums 90% of the time to help with the syncopation and the groove. But are they a melodic instrument? Yes, absolutely. The bass has moving lines throughout this entire track. In fact, it shares a lot of the components of its melody with the lead synth, which is the pure melodious element here. It sits between both worlds, and I find that to be a really cool element of this track as well. Now, what is this song saying, though? And here's where I get a little bit lost. There is a type of positivity to this track mixed with a little bit of tension, I want to say. I want to say that this song is bright and bouncy, but it isn't tense and dark either. It's somewhere in the middle, and I think it's a combination of the two of these, where after we got through the first verse, chorus, instrumental section, I was trying to figure out, once we got back into the next verse, and I thought to myself, okay, we're repeating some things. We're going to take a moment to kind of think, spend some brain process, figuring out what the song's trying to say. The first word that came to my mind was curious. Well, actually, I think the first word that came to my mind was kind of childlike. But there's a maturity to this that I don't think childlike is right. And I think that's where I landed on curiosity. And I think that's what this song sounds like, that there is danger in curiosity. And that's what that little tinge of darkness is in this track. But for the most part, there is a reinforcement of positivity here, of wanting to know something else that I get in this track. And maybe that's what the point of the evolution of the melody is, wanting to explore more of it. But I suppose if that were true, we would hear more variations of it. After all, the layered melodic writing we have in the first verse is the same that we get in the second verse and the third verse. We don't hear more variants of this divided but parallel approach to melody writing. It's just the one. So I don't know. There is also the instrumental bit, which I think brings in a bit more, I don't know, there's something unsettling about it. I got to see when this came out. This is a topic that I approached last week during one of the songs that we checked out that was on the older side. It might have been Merle Travis, was that it? But it might also have been the Ring of Fire, Johnny Cash. Either or, one of the older tracks. And I mentioned that the harmonic language and the way that we process chord progressions emotionally has changed over the years, the decades, the centuries, that what once might have been reverence now comes across as a bit more eerie, and that some of the sounds I was hearing in that track, which I think at the time was supposed to be more positive, maybe kind of came across a little more negative to me, or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact circumstances, but I'm curious if that's what's going on here too. Because I don't really feel like this was a scary song. I don't feel like the atmosphere reinforces the chordal progression or my relationship to the chordal progression. I don't think that the melodic elements, the rhythmic elements reinforce that. It's just the chords that kind of give me this off-putting element in these instrumental parts. But it could also just be the shrillness of the instrument, a purely timbral production element to this song. Regardless, they always put me a little less at ease than the verse and chorus did. The vocals I also didn't bring up at all, really, aside from talking about their relationship to the melody. They're very stilted, but this is just what I expect from Kraftwerk. Maybe that ties into themes, but I also just see it as their style, and I don't know how much I would want to read into that as far as the thematic elements here. Let me take a moment to read some lyrics. We'll discuss those, and then we will wrap this video up. Just a straightforward story here that I don't see any themes showing up in the music. Talks about somebody who sees a model, says she's looking good, but she plays hard to get. She doesn't smile too often, but she will for a camera, which makes sense. It's her job. Verse 2 talks about her going out to nightclubs, checking out the men. She plays her game and the men around her. You can hear them say that she's looking pretty good. Verse 3 says now she's posing for consumer products. For every camera, she gives the best she can. I saw her on the cover of a magazine. Now she's a big success. I want to meet her again. That's it. That's the whole song. I saw someone who was attractive. She went out to clubs at night. Now she's, she's made it big in the modeling world. She's on magazines, and I'd like to meet her again. Very straightforward track. Lyrically, at least. Unless there's some deeper meaning I'm missing here. I don't know. I will say, though, that this track came out in 78, and I think that this is still the thing that stands out to me the most about Kraftwerk is how modern their music sounds. Maybe not 2020s modern, but every time I see the date of one of their tracks, I can't help but think, wow, they were doing this at this level of production with these sounds then? They were very much on the forefront of electronic music and synth-based music, and once again, I think this song kind of stands out to me in that regard. very cool things. And it kind of, in a sense, also alleviates some of my disappointment with that final tone because, I mean, it was the beginning. You know, maybe not the absolute beginning of using synthesizers, but it was definitely near the start. There's going to be some rough edges as this was a new art form. So yeah, still not a sound I enjoyed there at the end, but you know, I'm willing to overlook it a little bit more, remembering just how old, and I say that as if we're talking about, you know, hundreds of years ago, but you know, just how old this song is compared to the type of music they were making, which I still think is phenomenal. They were doing it in the 70s. These are my thoughts on Kraftwerk's The Model. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this track? Please put all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to, into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link for a Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.